Hi everyone, it's Sherry from Our Life Homeschooling. I am looking forward to what I have to share with you today. I want to invite you to take a look at my kids' homeschool checklist. This year I have a 10th grader, 9th grade, let's see if I can remember them all, 7th, 5th, 3rd, 1st, kindergartner, then we have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old, and we also have a son who graduated last year. I'm going to be showing you our homeschool checklist to give you just a little insight into what we're doing each day. If this is your first time on my channel, I like to always introduce myself. My name is Sherry. I'm glad to have you here. I'm a former public school teacher turned homeschool mom. This is our 14th year homeschooling and we have 10 kids. The oldest is graduated. We have 7 in school and then 2 that are preschoolers, 3 and 1. Before I get started on sharing my kids' checklist with you, I made a few notes of things that I just want to show you and just make you aware of before you look at their checklists. First of all, if you have watched any of my videos, you know that we have 4 basic parts to our day. Our day is pretty simple. We have morning time together. Next is chores. We all work together to get the house cleaned up. The next thing is their independent work. That's third. We take a break for lunch and going outside. And then the fourth is after lunch, when we put the little ones down, I read to our kids. So what I'm showing you today is that third part, their independent work, where they get their checklists and go one by one through the things that I have assigned on there for them. After you know the basic breakdown of what we do in a day, then you can understand what's not on their checklist. So I don't have morning time on their checklist. Morning time is when we do Bible reading, memory work, hymn study, picture study, composer study. Sometimes we'll diagram a sentence. This year we're memorizing the presidents of the United States. We're reviewing some historical documents. I read 2 Shakespeare plays to them. I don't read the entire play. I read from some books that are a summary of the play that tell it in story form. We also do current events. So our morning time, we cover a lot of material, and that's something you're not going to see in their checklists. Another thing you won't see is the fourth part of our day, which is when I read aloud to the kids. So you're not going to see science, and for the most part, you're not going to see history on there. For my older kids, you will, but for those that are in high school. But for the most part, you're not going to see science and history on there because I read aloud to them in the afternoon. Science and history, and I also read aloud just a fun chapter book, usually one for the younger kids and then one for the older kids. I kind of alternate between the two depending on who's here, because with having older kids, some of them are gone for different events or working and things like that. A couple things I wanted to mention when you take a look at their checklist. At the top, I have their grade level, and I want to let you know ahead of time that this number to me is only a number that helps me determine when they're going to graduate. Other than that, it means nothing. In our homeschool, I don't follow any guidelines for what they're supposed to be doing in a certain grade. My philosophy is just we continue to make progress every day and we keep moving forward. And we do that individually for each of our kids so that we can meet their individual needs and they can go at their own pace. So the grade levels really mean nothing except for me to know when they're going to graduate. The next thing that I think is important for you to know is that I make their checklists differently each year. So what I have laid out this year might look really different from next year. The format is basically the same, but sometimes I just switch things up. In the past, I've put on their checklist what we're doing in morning time just as a note to me. This year, I don't have it on there. So it does kind of change, and I sit down with my kids at the beginning of the year, one by one, and look over the checklist. We get on the computer, and we make it together. So I sit down individually with each of them, and we make it together. And this is really nice because it helps them take ownership of it, and it becomes more personal for them. Another thing I want to note is that at the top of each of my kids' checklists, I have Bible reading I assign them to read a section of the Bible every day. I have this on my kids' checklist because it's a habit that I want to help them form every day. And I'm sure some people could look at this as being legalistic. I don't think of it that way. I look at it the same way I look at asking my kids to brush their teeth. I want them to brush their teeth every day because I know what happens when you don't take good care of your teeth on a daily basis. It's something that takes very little time and something that we want to prioritize. It's a habit that I know as an adult can be really hard to form, and if we can help form that in our kids when they're really young, it's going to benefit them long term. I've done a post on the progression of how we move our kids from reading really simple Bible story books up until getting into reading the actual Bible. If you want to take a look at that, I'll make sure to include that below. Another thing I want to tell you is about how much time the kids spend on their independent work. So for my older kids, this can be anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. These kids are in high school. They've got, some harder classes. They do a lot on their own. So it really varies. My younger kids, so my kindergartner, I would say like 30 minutes, an hour. First through fifth grade, probably like 1 to 2 hours, depending on where they are in certain spots. Sometimes math is easier, sometimes it's harder. So just to give you a rough idea of how much time it takes them to do their checklist. A last thing I want to share with you is that our youngest son, Will, is in kindergarten, but you're not going to see a checklist for him. He's not reading independently. He's not writing on his own. I'm still working one-on-one with him. His work, it doesn't take much time at all, but he's not at a stage where he's ready to do this on his own. So he doesn't have a checklist. You're not going to see his work, but I do spend every day doing a reading lesson, copy work, and a little bit of math with him. I'm going to be spending a majority of this video without me in the shot. It's just going to be a shot of my kids' checklist and just going through one step by step what we do each day. But if you want to get a closer look at what we're doing on a day-to-day basis and just see how this fleshes out, you can take a look at some of my day in the life videos where I really just show what it looks like in our home. So let's dive into their checklist. So I'm going to start here with my daughter, Juliana. She's 7 years old. She's one that took pretty quickly to reading and writing. She just learned fast. She was ready. So on her checklist, you can see every day she has Bible reading, math, and copy work. That's the same Monday through Friday unless we're at co-op. And then 2 days a week, she is doing her nature journal. And then 2 days a week, she's doing Cetera, which is an online geography program that we really love. She does not do written narrations. I just have her narrate to me when I read to her during the day. And then the last thing at the bottom is her Ambleside online reading. We just try to make sure that I get in a reading with her every single day, and I'm reading to her still those books. She has some free reading books that she does on her own, but that's not on here. The bottom half of this is really notes more for us. This top half is what all my kids do for their independent work. So on the bottom left, I just have 3 of the things, the 3 classes that she's taking at our co-op. So she's taking an art class, a music class, and a sign language class. And I just have that on here. It's nice for me to reference it to remember what each of the kids are doing in co-op. Here is the list of Ambleside Online books that I want to cover with her this year. I have a whole post on how we make Ambleside Online work for our large family. In that post, I have written each of the books that I want for our kids to read. Ambleside's a feast. It's way more than anyone could try to do if they tried to cover it all. But I have certain books that are just a must read. And on that post, I have listed all the books for years 1 through 6 of what I really like for my kids to read. And these are the ones I wanted her to have this year. This really is not necessary. This is just something that I wanted to fill up this space. So at the beginning of the year, when we talked about her checklist, we wrote down some of the things that she wanted to do in her free time. And this is a nice thing that I'll probably refer to when I'm writing out the cover page for her portfolio, just to write some of the things she did this year to fill in her time. Next is my son James. He's 9 years old. He's reading and writing independently. So the top half, again, is what my kids are looking at. This is what they do every day. At the first 3 blocks, Bible reading, math, and copy work are the same all week except for the day we're at co-op. The next block is a writing block. Now he's not doing written narrations yet, so I'm still having him orally narrate to me whenever I read to him. But 2 days a week, Monday and Friday for him, he's doing language. So around this age, if a child's ready, I have them start a formal language program, and we do a Becca. You can see more about that on the blog. I did a post, I think it's Our Large Family Homeschool Curriculum, and I talk about what we use for language. And then 1 day a week, he's writing in his nature journal. 2 days a week, he's doing typing. The next block is piano. He takes piano lessons. And then the last block is his Ambleside reading book. Down here, I have his list of Ambleside books. Some of these books he has read on his own, and some of them, I know it's going to be too challenging for him, so I'm reading them to him. Right now, we're working on Children of the New Forest, and I'm actually reading this to him and Afton because they haven't had that one yet, and she's my 11-year-old. So I usually have a book that I read, an older and a younger book that I'm reading aloud to the kids in the afternoon. But I also have usually one Ambleside reading book that I'm doing with each of my kids, and I just go through it really slowly. So it's going to take us really all year to get through Children of the New Forest. And then the last thing he wrote in, he wanted to do Duolingo. This is a foreign language program. It's online. It takes like 10 minutes, and the kids really love it. So he added that to his checklist after we made it at the beginning of the year. At co-op, his 3 classes are science experiments, gym, and a history class. And then for his free time, he likes basketball, baking, working out, reading, and clean his room. And this is my daughter Afton. She's 11. So her top 3 blocks are the same as well. She's doing Bible reading, math, copy work. Next is her writing block. 2 days a week, she does language, and 2 days a week, she does narration. She has started written narrations for the first time this year, I think. Actually, maybe she did it last year. I can't remember. But she has 2 days a week where she's doing a written narration, and then this third writing block, she's doing a nature journal 1 day a week. Her next block is piano. She takes piano lessons, and then Ambleside reading. She is able to read a lot of the Ambleside books, but again, I'm reading to her and James, Children of the New Forest. I think the one she's working on is Robinson Crusoe. Leonardo da Vinci is one I like to read to them. That's a little harder. Poor Richard, I like to read them to them too. If I don't get these done in the year, I'll often just put them on the next year. And then she added a last block. She wanted to type in a book. She has a book that she's writing just for fun, so that's something she does 1 day a week. And then these last 2 are Cetera, which is the geography program that we really like. At her co-op class, she's taking apologetics and missions for her first block, a literature class. This has been a really fun. They've gone through 4 different books, like a little book club that they do, and French. Her free time, baking, laundry, sewing, knitting, reading to siblings, farm work, letter writing. And again, when I sit down with my kids at the end or at the beginning of the school year, the 2 of us talk about this whole thing, and she talks about what she wants to do in her free time. Another thing I want to mention to you, and this is really, really important, I am sharing these checklists with you because I know how helpful it can be to just look at what someone else is doing. When I do this, though, I try to be so careful. I've looked at a lot of my friends' checklists, looking at what other moms are doing. I try to be really, really careful to look at what might work for our family and to just toss out what's not going to work. So I want to challenge you to do the same. Our checklist is based around the individual needs of each of our kids and our family. So some of the personal things that you have in your family that take up more time or that you know that you're doing, but it's not reflected on your checklist, we have those too. We have things, schedules and different things going on that make our checklist look a certain way, just like yours does. So you have to really be careful, I think, when you're looking specifically at what someone else is doing, and make sure you're still, it's good to get ideas, but still form your family's personal plan around what works for you. And that is going to look so different for each family. So use this as a guide, but make sure you're doing what's best for you and your kids. This is my daughter, Brinley. She's 13 years old. She lost her checklist recently, and when I was going to do this, I realized we couldn't find it. Usually by this time in the year, my kids have seen their checklist so much, they pretty much have it memorized. They know what they have to do every day. So that's why we couldn't find her checklist. But I wanted to print it out for you, and I don't know why it cut off that side of it, but I still wanted you guys to just get a peek at it. So she has Bible reading, math, and also copy work to start her day. She does Russian through Duolingo. My kids, when I was young, I studied Russian, really loved it, and it's something I've kind of passed on to some of them. So she studies Russian, and then one day of the week she does Satera, which is the online geography program that we like. She does language through Abeka 3 days a week, and again, I usually have them just do 1 page a day, and then 2 days of written narrations. The next thing on her list is Ambleside reading. These are the Ambleside books that she's working on, and she has read all of them herself this year. She takes piano lessons, and then she's also working on history, and she's doing science as well. I don't have that on here, but she asked to do science. She's just kind of a real go-getter. So she's working on Story of the World and History Lives, just reading a little bit of it. And for science, she wanted to do one of the Apologia years that we did years ago. So, and then for her co-op, this is our family co-op. Her 3 classes are literature, apologetics, and missions. She takes a sewing class at our co-op. This is one that I teach with a friend of mine. Well, she teaches and I'm the helper, but this has been really, really fun. They've made a ton of just adorable projects. She made a skirt this year, hair scrunchies, a drawstring bag. I'm trying to think. They made a ton of really nice things. She's in a personal finance class with my older 2 kids where they're in a stock exchange game. This is my daughter, Jenna. She's in 9th grade. Once our kids get to 9th grade, they are in 2 co-ops. They're still in our family co-op that meets. It's more of a relational co-op. They take a lot of elective type classes there, but then they also go to a second co-op where they get credits for their transcript. So she has 4 classes she's taking from there: Algebra 1, French, General Science, and Artistic Crafts. So for her checklist, her first thing is Bible reading, and then she put these in order of how she wanted to do them. She usually works on algebra first. This is an English credit that I am doing with her here at home. So I have some literature books that I've assigned her. She's continuing in her Abeka language book, and she also is doing a couple book reports and writing in a book that she's working on, and I'm putting that together as an English credit for her. This is also all her cornerstone work. She's also working towards a history credit. This isn't, again, you don't have to do a whole credit in 1 year. You can work towards a credit and it may take you more than 1 year. I have my kids in high school to get a history credit. I have them read 2 volumes of Story of the World, and I don't have it written on here, but also History Lives series, about 2 or 3 of those books. And 2 each of those is about a credit. So she's just slowly going through that. She takes piano, and she has this one at the bottom. This is a class from Cornerstone that she's taking, but it doesn't require any work at home, not a lot of work. So it's just not, it's a credit she's getting, but it's not something she works on every day. Then at the bottom is her classes that she's taking from our family co-op, which is more electives. She has a graphic design class, theology, psychology, and they're doing a personal finance class. As part of this, they're in a stock exchange competition, which has been really, really fun for them. When we started and made this out, I wasn't sure exactly what books I was going to have her do this year. So I know that she did Jane Eyre, Once and Future King. She's added some to this since then. I don't have them on here. This is what I have written down to help make up her English credit that she's working towards. This is our son Luke. He's in 10th grade, so he also is going to our family co-op, which is a relational co-op, as well as Cornerstone, which is a drop-off co-op where they're getting credits for their transcript. His day starts with Bible reading, and then he just works on his credits for the classes that he has. Geometry, writing, biology, and he has a fencing class. So those are classes that he's taking at co-op from other teachers, and he communicates with them throughout the week. Now, I'm combining his writing class. I have him continuing just probably 2 pages a day of language. Looks like 4 days a week he's working on that. I'm combining that and a history narration and an Ambleside narration, 2 narrations a week. I'm combining all those with his writing credit to make an English credit. Let's see what else for him. He's working towards a history credit as well, but I don't know that he'll necessarily get it in this year. That's Story of the World and History Lives. And these are just notes for myself of where he is in those. From our other co-op, our family co-op, he's taking graphic design, theology, psychology, and personal finance. He and Jenna are pretty much doing similar things with that. These are some of the Ambleside books that he's reading this year: How to Be Your Own Selfish Pig, Pursuit of God, Once and Future King, Whatever Happened to Penny Candy, and Watership Down. While I have the checklist out, I thought it might be helpful just to show you this book list also goes in the back of their checklist. So I have their checklist on one side, and on the back is their book list that they keep track of, and they're writing all the books that they read for independent reading, and then any books that I read aloud to them during the school year goes over here. So this is just really handy to keep in the slipcover with their checklist for them to keep track of throughout the year. All right, so that is basically what we are doing this year for our independent work. I hope that gives you some ideas. I kind of have the feeling that this video is going to really generate a lot of questions. Feel free to ask questions. I'll do my best to answer them. Again, I just want to remind you that our schedules, our checklists really revolve around what works for us, and there may be some great ideas for you, but all of it may not work for you. It may be too much, it may be too little. And I know how flexible we are with what's on our schedule, and I know how tight to make things when we need to buckle down. So everything is going to look different for every family, and make sure you're personalizing this for how it's going to fit for you. Thanks for watching today. I'll see you next week.